We are meeting here in the 26 Cafe Palestine to really hear from the voices of Palestinians in occupied East Jerusalem amidst the violent arrest and death in detention of Nizar Banat by the PA, and while Palestinians are insisting that accountability is imperative. Dispossession and immobilization are often generated by forces of political oppression against which the colonized generate their own power, demonstrating an innate capacity to cope, to survive, to resist, and to live. My neighbor here in the old city of Jerusalem was evacuated from her house, and I found her sitting on the streets, is explaining how and telling me I'm in the streets and the settlers are in my home. That scene of my neighbor sitting outside her home, mourning its loss and the loss of her memories at home, her attachment to the details of her own life, and the Israelis uprooting that is it's going not only to her memory, but also the aesthetics detail of our lives is really hard at work. Yeah. So if our grandparents held the keys, hoping to return, working, fighting, resisting settlers blocking of their return, today in Jerusalem, it's not only a fight against the Judaization of the space, the preservation of the home with its details, its windows, its doors, its shades, its entrances, its dining tables, and the gathering and discussion around it. It's the preservation of life amidst debility and debilitation. So debilitation will be the first topic that we will be asking our speakers here to deal with. And debilitation is there to individualize the attacks, the evictions, the settlers' violence, and so on. That slow violence that we will be talking about, that invisible carcerality and its various shades of carcerality, its intimacy, it's feminist, it's gender powered, and the need to hear the voices in order to be attentive to the details, to the everydayness. Let me say one thing, that the ethical concerns of listening to the precarious waiting of demolition, forced eviction, like Qutaiba's situation, crossing checkpoints, dealing with unending dismemberment, not only as it operates as an embodied form of settler colonial violence, but also in terms of how the precarities around anticipating future threats, the unknown, the moments of wounding, the ones in which the bulldozers might arrive, are challenged and interrupted by affirmed Palestinian life and hope. Politics is about understanding power and making change. So the voices shared today are here to help us understand more power and try to make some change. So let me start with my first question to all speakers. Can you please share with us your understanding of debility in occupied East Jerusalem? And I want to talk to Sharihan because Sharihan is our first speaker, Sharihan Hannoun from Sheikh Jarrah. Can you please share with us the way you see debilitation? Can you speak about the matrix of power that debilitated you in Jerusalem?
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Nadira, to give me this chance to speak today. My name is Sharihan Hannoun. When somebody asks me to introduce myself, I always say I am Sharihan Hannoun from Palestine, Jerusalem Special, a refugee from Haifa. It's very important for me to say that I'm a refugee from Haifa because my grandfather was a refugee from Haifa in 1948. And this is the point of my story in Jerusalem, that my grandfather refugee from Haifa to Jerusalem according agreement between Jordanian government and UNRWA. In this time, any refugee in Jerusalem, they give them a refugee card. To let you know what the refugee card are, refugee card is a card they're giving for refugee people to have food. What the Jordanian government and UNRWA, they asked my grandfather to bring this card back and pay a small amount of money to have a house in Jerusalem. And this was happening in 1948. My grandfather have a house in Jerusalem in Sheikh Jarrah Special. In 1967, there is a war happening, and after that Jordanian leave Palestine, and for our like by mistake they didn't put the houses in our names. There is just like an agreement between Jordanian and UNRWA that this house is for refugee people. Then here our story started, that like we start like fighting with the court, Israeli court, to say that this house is for us in Jerusalem, that we are the people who have this land, that this house, this is our houses in Jerusalem. Since childhood, I remember that my family always going to the court to say that this house is for us or not for us. This house is for Israeli, as they say, or it's for Palestinian. Then in 2nd of August 2009, especially at 5 in the morning, when we say 5 in the morning, everybody have good sleeping in warm bed. For us, we have like a small action movie. I always say it's action movie because it's like unaccepted at what's happening. At 5 in the morning, I hearing in this day my cousin shouting and screaming that the police coming to evacuated us. Then in the beginning, I think that I'm dreaming. There is maybe like I'm still in bed dreaming, but no, it's the truth. Like I'm running to the guest room to see what's happening, from where the voice coming. Then I'm surprised. I feel that I'm in a whirlpool, that what happening, like 100 numbers of police, a huge number of soldiers are standing near my houses, shouting that open the door, open the door. You know, like to share and say my feeling in this time. I feel like I am in the middle of the room, looking around me, like many ideas coming to my head. Did I am dream? Are this the end? Like maybe I'm died now. Maybe I'm still dreaming. You know, it's very difficult to say this feeling in a word, because many things happening in this moment. We speak just about 1 minute, like during I'm running to the guest room until I see the huge number of the police. Then like in a few minutes, I'm like hearing a voice of one of the police shouting on me, opening the door. In this time, I don't know actually from where I'm bringing the power. I told him, do you have like a paper to evacuate me? When I'm thinking about it, I think, Sharihan, are you stupid? Why you ask him for a paper? Like it's Israeli settlement, Israeli, like they are Israelis. They took what they want in Palestine without anybody saying anything. But you know, like again, I ask him, do you have any paper to evacuate me? Like in a few minutes, I don't finish my word. Like all the door are broken, the windows glasses are broken, and a huge number of police enter my house, shouting on me, evacuate, go out the house. Like you have to go out your house without taking anything. For me, like I'm still like freezing in the guest room, thinking like again, I'm dreaming, like I'm a climb. Why they want to take my house? Why they shouting on me? Why they have all these guns? Why they wanted to arrested me? Like many questions coming in this moment. Then I saw my small brother running to me. Actually, I'm wearing pajama in this time. He told me, take my jacket and wear it, like because you are in pajama, and you know I'm like a religious woman. He told him, don't be close to her. Yalla, you have to go outside. He told them, why I have to go outside? He didn't finish his word. Many of police like put him in the floor, starting beating him. I'm looking for my brother. I think that he's a martyr right now. I try to save him, but nobody let me go close to him. The police came, take me and take my brother and kick us outside. You know, they kick us outside as we are a rapesh. It's not our house. They are the one who has this right to stay in our houses. Like the surprise for me when I'm going outside my house, I saw all my family outside, my cousin, like my cousin bleeding from his back, all of them screaming, all of them feeling like bad, police shouting on us, leave. Nobody of the neighbor can come close to us. You know, you feel that you are like stuck in this time, and you don't understand what's happening near to you. Are you in trauma, or are you dreaming, or are you in whirlpool? What's happening? In a few minutes, I found my father, my mother, all my brother outside, all my family are outside. And in a few minutes, I see all like our furniture are coming outside the houses, and one of the settlement shouting, wow, we have a new house in Jerusalem. In this time, I'm feeling like, come on, like, why is this settlement coming to my house and live where I born? Why, like, police gives my house for this settlement? He didn't know anything about the house. Like, I saw our lemon tree. I painting with my family this lemon. Why he have our lemon tree? And then the thing make me surprised. And one of the settlement child took my brother football and start playing in the football. And one of the police opening our fridge and starting eating my brother chocolate. You know, like your feeling is like they don't have any feeling, like they kick us our houses and they using our stuff, eating our kids chocolate, playing in our kids games. Like, come on, like it's not, it's horrible. Like nobody can imagine like the way they're dealing with Palestinian. And then like the settlers bring them furniture and living in our houses. And here we starting living in the street. Like in one day, like after 20 years I'm living in my house, I found myself in the street with my family without having anything, and see every day a settler people coming inside my house, having a good life in my house with the protect of the police, and nobody can change anything. And actually, if they have a paper, no problem. Like if there is a legal thing said that this house is for them, okay, I understand. But all the legal paper are with us that this house is for us. But like, you know, we born under Israeli settlement. We born under Israeli settlement, and we know that this this situation are normal in Palestine. Then, like I asked one of the police, like in this day I have exam in my university. I want to speak with one of the police kindly. I say maybe he will give me my bag of and my book. I ask one of the police, please, can you give me my book? He looking for me like as a surprise face, and he told me, are you crazy? Like we kick you outside your house and you ask me to bring you your book and your bag of the university book. I told him, yes, I have exam today and it's very important for me to continue study. And actually, normally I don't love study, but like in this time, I don't know what's coming to my mind. I want my book. Khalas, like you took my house, I want my book. He told me, you know, Palestinians always are strong. We kick you outside your house and you ask me to go and do your exam. I will not give you your book. Actually, in this time, I like take a decide that today I will start study. I will have a good mark. Before I want to be a lawyer, but like now when you refuse to give me my book, I will be a psychologist. And today I am a psychologist. And actually it's good to say that like I start study like in the street, and one day Dr. Nadira, she visit us in the street, she found me study and she told me, what do you study? I told her I want to be a psychologist to helping people and like to take care about them feeling and to supporting us. That okay, the police told me that you are strong people, never give up. Okay, we'll show you that we are strong people, never give up. And today I'm a psychologist supporting people. Yeah, I have my own story that I losing my house. I'm evacuated from my house, living in the street for 6 months, every day having a normal life, seeing a settlers using my house. But today I can't like support my family, support Palestinian people, like to continue. Actually, like it's very important to say, like it's what this story, it's before 20 year old. And but for sorry for that, like today it's continue with another neighbors. Today we have another 4 families. The Israeli court want to evacuate them and give the houses they own it to another settlers. Like it's good to say the names of the families are Skafi, Qasim, Jaouni, Kurd. Today, like it's very important to say that I hope our story, our own story, not repeat again with these families. When I evacuated with Ghawi family and Kurd family, and it's very difficult for us to coping mechanism, like to say it's normal to continue in our normal life, like to try to forget it. Actually, when I say try to forget it, I'm lying in myself. Until now, I have like some of trauma. Until now, I'm dreaming about the evacuated. Like I always say, I'm a psychologist and I'm aware about my feeling. When I hear some broken glasses, really I have flashback. Like I remember the evacuated. remember as what happening to me when they evacuated me. Because of that, I don't want this feeling, this trauma to continue to our neighbors. Because of that, today I will speak about this story.
شكراً. شكراً.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharihan, for. It's hard as much as I know the story, and yes, it's true. We met in the streets. Sharihan's family was in the streets for 6 months, hoping for global reactions, for local reactions, for a change. But dispossession is dispossession. Papers, courts, laws, nothing have stopped it, and the psychological effect is there, but the power is also heard in Sharihan's voice. Let me continue. It's hard to move from you, Sharihan, but it's like this search for home at home, and the worry about the family and the dismemberment is so strong in your voice. Let me move to Kutaiba. Kutaiba, are you there? Yeah. Kutaiba معاي? Kutaiba, I know that it's hard for Kutaiba now to hear Sharihan, but Kutaiba has 3 days are left مزبوط before the demolition of the houses in Silwan. So from our previous talks, you shared and your own exposure to the suspended violence of the settlers around you, both on the level of the body and the psychic, your fears, the threats, the anxieties. So we would like to hear your voice, Kutaiba.
Yes, yes.
تفضل.
Hello to everybody. How are you? Let me introduce myself, please. I am number 64, according to municipality files, and number 49, according to the Ateret Kohanim Settler Foundation. But my real name is Kutaiba Ode. I am a young man. I was born in a village near the walls of the old city. Her name is Silwan. Do you know Silwan? Silwan, where the biggest dreams are that we can build a house and live safely. From the point of view, the house is a right. But for us, it's a dream. Silwan became a witness to a war crime against human and stone. From the age of 11 till 17, I was arrested more than 7 times. Can we say it's child arrested case? Or should we say that children are terrorists? My family are almost 21 members in Silwan. 10 of them are children. We have 3 houses in Silwan. 2 of them have demolishing orders, and 1 have evacuation order. Again, number, and more numbers. But I am Kutaiba Jum'a Khadir Ode Al-Hulesi Silwani, and I count more names till we count 20 of my grandfather who we born in Silwan. And all this for the occupation is just bullshit. We are nothing. Over 7,000 persons are under ethnic cleansing, are nothing and can disappear with a blink. The people in Silwan are simple. They might be happy if you give them a rose. And what they care about most is their dignity. The ongoing political violence in the Silwan area has always led to arrests and clashes. And Silwan people stay after all of that steadfast. For us, what matter that you will see us as stories, not as number. Remember all the psychosocial situation that our children have to face everybody in order to stay in their houses and not be arrested or killed by a settler. that see him a threat, not as a human. Now, as we are talking, we are having self-demolishing order that if we don't apply that, they will come and demolish and ethnic clean us. At the end, I will tell you that a young boy called Jihad, he is only 17 years old and was arrested and forbidden from doing his final school exam. And that means he is now crying that he lost his future to go a college and study. Yes, welcome to Silwan, where every right is just a dream, where is the silent war take place in our days, but with us placing hope instead of pain. يعني sorry of my English language, but
شكرا كتير كتيبة. Thank you very much. Thank you for this moving testimony, and it's really very moving and you are not a number. This is Kutaiba from Silwan, and I'm so honored to introduce you here in UK-Palestine. I'm so honored to hear you, Kutaiba. I think that he spoke about his childhood as a child, how many times he was arrested, not only arrested, but even home arrested. So his home was turned into a prison in his home in Silwan. Kutaiba was talking about demolitions, self-demolitions, because this is another mode of debilitation in Silwan, the ethnic cleansing and the actual demolition and eviction. And he insisted he is not a number and you are not a number. We will come back to you, Kutaiba. Thank you for sharing. Thank you. Let me move to Ratiba. I know that it's heavy on the audience, but it's Jerusalem. It's the situation in Jerusalem. Ratiba Nachi, can you share with us your perceptions about your situation as a woman, as a mother, as a person who's active, as a feminist activist, as a person who experienced the debilitation in occupied East Jerusalem? Ratiba.
Actually, it's our life. It's every moment from our life that can make a movie or action movie, if you want to say. I want just to share some flashes from my childhood, from my life during these years in Jerusalem. I will start with a phone call 2 days ago with one of my friends when I asked him, what are you doing now? And he say, I'm walking on the mountain. It may seem for some of you that he is making sport or something like that, but in reality, it's in the opposite. He is looked down in Jerusalem. He is with a military decision of that prevent him from moving in the West Bank. On the other hand, his wife kicked out of Jerusalem to Hebron because she didn't have a permit to stay in Jerusalem after more than 10 years of marriage of him, because she can't have a family unification. And his 4 children kept out without medical insurance as a kind of punishment for his activism in Jerusalem. And it's not about this friend by specification, but it's for another 6 friends of mine that passed the same procedures and of punishment in Jerusalem. My friend Abir Abu Khdair, and she's one of the Women Coalition as well. Her family was punished by getting the medical insurance from them. And it's like, yes, this actions return me back to my childhood. My mother took 16 years in courts and trials trying to have a family unification and to register her 4 children in her ID, just to tell that they are her children and she's married for a man. He's just an activist, a political activist, and it's forbidden in Israel to be activist. It's our life in Jerusalem. It's not just that we pass this limitation in our childhood. We lived afraid for 16 years because in every moment we are threatened by taking out from our center, life center, and maybe arrested. We face in our childhood a lot of military attack to our homes in the middle of the night. They took my mother and my father, and they kicked my mother out of Jerusalem because she didn't have a permit to stay in Jerusalem. It's the same situation in every single decision for a man or a woman that they want to marry from a mate from outside Jerusalem. So it's even the marriage decision in Jerusalem, it's limited by these laws and permits of staying here. You can't love your colleague mate or your work, your classmate or your colleague in the work or your family that are living outside Jerusalem, because this marriage will mean a very long suffering for you and for your children. This is just one story. But what about the limitation of moving from one city to another? I want to share a story of mine. During my first pregnancy, I was crossing the military checkpoint Kalandia. It's a checkpoint between Jerusalem and Ramallah, and they asked me for a physical or for body search, just to make sure that this is my tummy and it's not something else. So they stopped me and get me out of the bus, and in the middle of the street, in front of everybody in the street, they start to put me like a subject for a physical search on the street. And they kept laughing on me while they are putting their hands on my body. And then they told me, yes, you have Jerusalem ID, so you are Jerusalemite and you can pass. But what about your baby inside you? We don't know the father. Maybe he is not permit to cross the checkpoint. So I start crying because I can't express my feeling in that moment. What about my baby? You are talking about fetuses in their mother's wombs that they need permit, or like they need evidence that they have the right to cross the checkpoint. Why? It's really unbelievable. You can't understand it. Humanitarian things that happen. And this feeling of not that we didn't own our bodies and we are subject for physical search on the streets. This militarization of the spaces in Jerusalem remind me of another story that one of the residents in Sheikh Jarrah, and it's a neighborhood that is threatened by evacuation as well as Silwan. She told me that she take bath while she putting the towel around her body because she is afraid that they put cameras inside her bathroom. That bathroom that is full of holes, and she can't even make revelation or repairing it, because if she did so, they may think that she makes some changes in that house, and it will be an excuse for Ataret Kahanim and other settlers that she makes changes in this house under conflict, and they will kick her out of it. So it's a complicated situation. It's hard to think from where you will start talking about that. Our senses that is full of the smells of, I don't know, it's
Tank water.
Wastewater, yes.
Wastewater, yeah.
Yes. That we smell it during 2 or 3 months in every neighborhood now. It is the gases, it is the sounds of the pump, it's the, I don't know what kind of things can we start sharing the stories in Jerusalem. A lot of stories. I can raise my voice. I can't talk. I can't make any demonstration. I can't express myself. Even I feel that in every moment I am threatened by kicking out of Jerusalem, because there's a law in Israel says that every Jewish, wherever he was, from wherever he came, is more or has the right to replace me. To replace me for what? I don't know. As Sharihan says, they didn't have any paper, any permits, any logical cause why they must replace us. Just every one of us are threatened to be kicked out from his central life, the land that he lived in, born in, his grandfather live in it, just because he is not Jewish. And I don't know if I'm religious or not. I'm not religious at all, and it didn't mean anything for me, someone, if he is Jewish, Muslim, Christian, or whatever. It doesn't mean anything for me, but it means a lot for me to feel that I have a homeland, that I have the right to live in it in peace. And I'm not activist, a woman activist, or a political activist, or whatever. I'm just a person that wants to make a change. I suffer a lot in my childhood, and I want to make a better future for my three daughters, so they can live in freedom, so they can live in peace, so they can express themselves and their lives like any other teenagers in this planet.
Yeah. Thank you, Ratiba. Again, I think that the gendered aspect of and the politics of birth, demography in this occupied piece of land, the permit system, the love restrictions that Ratiba was pointing out, the 16 years of her mom struggling in order to be able to be recognized as a person who lives in her own city, in her land. And then she took us to the body search, how the embodiment of this occupation, and the surveillance cameras today in Sheikh Jarrah. And of course, like Ratiba was saying, that inside the shower of one of the families in Sheikh Jarrah, they fear that cameras, whether flying cameras or actual cameras, are being are there, and therefore even the ability to move inside one's home is becoming a major problem. So this is another story from Jerusalem. Shukran Ratibi. Dina Nasser, Dina, are you there? Dina?
Yes, thank you. I'm here, Nadira.
Yeah, thank you, Dina. Dina will be also sharing with us her own, witnessing her own story with the biopolitical, geopolitical, and necropolitics of this settler colonial state in this occupied city. Dina, tfaddali.
Thank you. My internet was cutting off. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Nadira. Hi, everyone. I'm humbled to come after my colleagues who carry the brunt of the debilitation that Nadira talks about. This is exactly the feeling that I have now at this moment. It's that kind of feeling almost helpless from within, unable, getting all this discomfort. It's a gutty, it's a visceral feeling that makes you feel like you're not able to cope anymore. We're still here.
Yes.
Because we believe in hope and we believe that we have a right, and so we stay here. But I always said, and could never explain it till I read what Nadira writes, what these words mean. But I always said it's in the core, and if Israel manages, or the settler colonialists manage to get to our core, then we cannot really continue to survive in this country. So we tend to try and resist this debilitation. We try to support each other. I listened to my colleagues, and again, I said, this is when in Palestine you say, oh, thank God, at least maybe I'm better off considering everything that's happening. I'm actually so far looking for a person to break my record of 36 years of non-family reunification. I'm married to a Palestinian who is born here, but had his family immigrate to the States. And it's 36 years we've been married now, and we still don't have family reunification. So although maybe we're safe and unsafe in our own space, so many times I would close the door and think of starting my story of how I closed the door because I had to say goodbye to my husband because his permit is not there. How I closed the door because he was not able to be with us when my father passed away. How I closed the door because my daughter had an accident and he couldn't be with us when we needed him most. So many moments I have flashbacks, like my colleague said, of these painful moments that are imposed on top of lots of the normal life stress factors just because of a settler colonialist. It brings out sometimes the anger and the hate and the, I shouldn't say the hate, but the some kind of like why just because you're a Jew from any country in the world you can be here, and my husband was born here as a Palestinian, and you feel like each person is occupying your own space. So each Jewish person, I should say, who believes in Zionism and has come to this country because Israel decided to equate a religion with a nationality, occupies my own space, the space of my husband, his brother, his sister, and everyone else who lost their right to be in Jerusalem and to be in Palestine just because they were ethnically cleansed in 48 and crossed the border, basically. So it is an ongoing thing. And I want to add one more thing. I'm a health professional, so I always try to, let's say, vent or cope or manage all these emotions through my work. So being a health professional, addressing the access of people to healthcare, the challenges of access to people in healthcare, has given me that sense of hope and going on because I have a purpose. It so happened now with what's happening in Jerusalem, Sheikh Jarrah, Silwan, Ras Bab al Amud, that I had just kind of helplessness that people talk about. I felt I had to tweet, I had to talk, I had to address the world and say, you know, where are you? Look at what's happening to us. If you really look closely at what the Israeli occupation army is doing in Bab al-Amud, they are hitting our children to render them disabled. They capture the young men, they lock their head. Not just an assault. This is not just to limit movement. This is that even after that person maybe survives or his injuries or gets out of prison or lockdown, they will have most probably concussions. They will have severe effects on the long term. They are basically trying to render us disabled physically and mentally so that we cannot cope, we cannot continue to exist. And on top of that is, again, one of the literature issues that Nadira wrote about, and I'm so glad to meet Nadira lately and read what she writes, is this occupation of the senses. I mean, we were standing in solidarity in Bab al-Amud just, you know, I don't want to call ourselves activists. I think each one in Palestine is a human rights defender, and this is the terminology. We are human rights defenders by just being here. We defend our rights as humans to be here. Is this use of the skunk water? They just spray the skunk water everywhere. Skunk water is used for demonstrations. Israel and the occupation has consistently used skunk water in our streets, spraying the walls endlessly, spraying all a dead body of an animal. It's that kind of smell, to make it really exact, everywhere we go, to access our shops, to access our banks. So even if you're not in areas where even the youth are really demonstrating, this has been the strategy. And you know the strategy why? Because it protects the army. If they don't gas us, because then they'll be exposed to gas. So this is in Jerusalem. They basically render you miserable. And I want to tell you, skunk water remains in your nose, in your hair, in your atmosphere for months to come. It's very difficult to get rid of. And anytime you're in a place where it's a bit crowded or there's steam, it just evokes all these smells all over again on all this trauma. And so we are still here. We have hope, and that's why we're still here. But the situation in Jerusalem have never been so dire. And as I said, when I visited Ireland, we need you to act. We don't need people just to, I mean, we thank you. We thank you very much for the solidarity, and the mental health is a major component now. And I've always said the mental health is what Israel colonialism is trying to get to. and all the strategies in their new assault on us has been more psychologically driven and thought of than just physical. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dina. I think that breaking a record of 36 years with papers, with courts, with requests, with asking for, and it's called, just think about the concept. It's called family reunification, and it's all about dismemberment. It's all the opposite. It's all about fragmenting. It's all about dismembering. It's all about, and then how this skunk water is really there. If you go to Silwan, where Qutayba lives, or you go where we walk around in Sheikh Jarrah and Ratiba, can tell you more. The skunk water invades your viscerals, really, and it stays. I was with Qutayba a couple of days ago inside Silwan, on every corner, all our homes, all our clinics, all our spaces are really packed with the skunk water. So it is an occupation of the senses, really. I want to move to Zach, and Zach Sabella will share with us also his own perception and framing of debilitation in Jerusalem, and then we'll move to our second part of the testimonies today, which is where do we draw our power and our resistance. But Zach, your own perceptions towards debilitation, Azizi.
Thank you, Nadira, and thank you everyone for your time today. It's an honor to be invited to speak. And honestly, I don't know how to add to these emotional stories of resistance and suffering in our dear city from my colleagues who just spoke before me. But I just want to shed some light on my perspective of this place, because really, from the way I see it, taking a bird's eye view of Jerusalem, it is really a segregated city. And it's purposely segregated by a major Israeli policy to maintain a 2/3 Jewish majority in the city. And this is not hidden. This is out there in the public domain. Israeli officials speak of it openly. And as a result, the whole system in Jerusalem is geared at maintaining this 2/3 majority. And what does this mean in practice? No budgets for Palestinian neighborhoods, awful services, very difficult permits to build, very outdated infrastructure. Even the internet speeds in Jerusalem neighborhoods, it's not important, but just to give you the context, are much slower than Israeli neighborhoods. And it's just, when you call an ambulance to come to a Palestinian neighborhood, it has to be accompanied by police because, it's seen as a hostile territory. So the whole system is set up to really give you the bare minimum of services. And every now and then you see some development in a park or something, and then they come and tell you, you see, we're also investing in you, which is an absolute joke. And the problem with this policy is not only that it's an institutional approach. You also see Israeli officials actively engaged on the ground. Sharihan spoke about her experience being evicted in Sheikh Jarrah. Just last month, the deputy mayor of Jerusalem was actively standing in the streets of Sheikh Jarrah, taunting Palestinian protesters and asking for the police to shoot them in the head, as opposed to shooting them anywhere else in the body. So it's not only the institution that mobilizes against you and says, well, the Sheikh Jarrah issue is a real estate dispute, which is absolute, it's a joke. But they actively go down to the street and participate in taunting those who are protesting these unjust policies. So the whole system mobilizes against you. Also, the way Israelis build settlements in and around Jerusalem. There's always this kind of planning to, and Netanyahu himself in one of his election campaigns proudly boasted that we are building settlements in a way that cuts off the natural growth of Palestinian cities like Bethlehem and Ramallah from connecting with Jerusalem. And the most kind of glaring example of this is the Har Khoma settlement, Jabal Abu Ghnaim, which has taken a whole green mountain and transformed it into a major settlement that really disconnects Bethlehem from Jerusalem and prevents this natural growth towards Jerusalem. So even in every little institutional tool that the Israeli government has, the Jerusalem municipality has, is geared at making sure that this two-thirds majority is there and that Palestinians are given an absolute hard time to live and survive in this city. You know, it's very expensive to build an apartment in Jerusalem for a Palestinian. You don't have access to loans from, for example, Israeli banks or financial institutions because of a number of reasons. So many Palestinians are forced by just the natural economic cycle to kind of look for alternative living, and they end up going to the West Bank. And this is deliberate. When they do go to the West Bank, the Israeli authorities chase them. They find that they're in the West Bank, and they start taking from them all the rights to live in Jerusalem, like the Jerusalem ID, your national insurance. They start stripping you of these things that connect you legally to Jerusalem. And all of a sudden, you're in a state of statelessness. You know, you're trying to survive, but at the same time, the difficulties of living in Jerusalem force you to look for alternatives. And when you do look for alternatives, they chase you and strip away your ID. So it's a lose-lose cycle, to be completely honest. And many people, including family members of mine, went through this very, very traumatic cycle of losing your ID and starting to strip you from your rights to come back. People who live in Jerusalem, who are born in Jerusalem, who try life elsewhere in the world, come back after 3-4 years to find that the Ministry of Interior in Israel have opened a file that with the intention of trying to kind of strip away that right. So there's always this active pursuit of harassing Palestinians and stripping away their rights to the city and really just pushing them out. And, you know, as psychologists here, you know, you have to imagine the state of mind that we go through. You're constantly in the state of mind that you're being watched by the state. You're being chased by the state. You're being harassed by the state. And every step that you take, whether you buy an apartment or whether you want to take your kids to a park or whether you want to, you know, just plan life as normal as possible, you always hit these psychological bumps that no, the state wants to do this and that to me. And, you know, I think over the past 2 decades, there has been a very open and outright policy to also strip Jerusalem of its Palestinian character. It started by closing Palestinian institutions that acted as political representative institutions like the Orient House, for example. And it goes down to the very basic activities like sports activities, like, for example, organized by Burj al-Laqlaq in the old city of Jerusalem, which happens to fly a Palestinian flag, and all of a sudden you find Israeli authorities coming down in huge numbers to stop a football tournament from taking space. Anytime you want to raise your Palestinian identity in some form or the other, they come and cut it immediately and very kind of aggressively. And, you know, it's just, this is the state in Jerusalem. And, you know, how do you coexist with such a state? Every person who lives in Jerusalem, every Palestinian is waging his or her own struggle to kind of stay put, to stay implanted in this place that we all love, that is ours. And, you know, what you're fighting a system that is so meticulous and so ruthless in making sure that, you know, you don't live an easy life. I'll give you one last example before I end. You know, my grandfather built a home in 1936 in Katamon, a beautiful home, and we have pictures of it. We have papers still of our ownership to that home. And because of you know, the 1948 war and the bombings that happened in Katamon by the Haganah and so on, you know, my family fled to Ghazir in Lebanon for a period of time before they came back to resettle in East Jerusalem. And, you know, Jews have the right, if they somehow prove that they own land in East Jerusalem, to go and claim it in Israeli courts. But Palestinians who have the same documents are prohibited from claiming that land. So I cannot go as a Palestinian and tell an Israeli court, you know, here are my papers. This is my grandfather's home in Katamon. I want it back. They're going to shut me down and say, sorry, this is a right that's exclusively in our legal system allowed to Jews. And so you're dealing with a system where one religion, one race really is above everything else. And the system mobilizes to make sure that the privilege and the rights of that race come before anybody else's, including us, the Palestinians. Let me stop here. I'll just end on a hopeful note that I think today in this age and time, we have really the eyes of the world on Palestine and Jerusalem. And I think in the era of social media, you know, there's no excuses anymore for people to say, you know, we didn't know. You know, you see this every day. You see this with what happened last month in Sheikh Jarrah. You see it with what's happening in Silwan. And, you know, those who want to be blind, you know, are a lost cause. But those who see, they need to act. And I think today there is an awakening, an international awakening. I think our generation is optimistic that this is going to lead to some form of unprecedented pressure on Israel to change its course, to change its racist policies, its emphasis on occupation and apartheid-like behavior. And hopefully together we can really bring this, this occupation that lasted too long to an end and allow our people to really enjoy the freedoms that everybody in the world enjoys. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach, really. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for historicizing, really taking it back to your grandparents' house in Katamon, and how the story and the narration continues and the displacement continues, and the segregation is there to cut people, to punish people, to control economically. And I want to move to the second section of our testimonies today and come back to you, Sharihan, because, you know, the issue of livability against dismemberment, or maybe amidst dismemberment, was always central to Palestine. So your voice and the voices of others have really showed us how there is a major colonial violence and dispossession. But there is also a clear manifestation of livability, of hope, of Sumud, as Zach just mentioned. So livability, as one of our Palestinian poets say, speaks life. So can you tell us about ways of resistance, of refusal, of raft of Sumud? Where do you see it? How do you see livability? How do you see your ability to challenge and interrupt the settler colonial machinery of dispossession? Sharihan?
Okay, as you say, it's very important to speak about the debilitation effected is that violence is not stopped, settler violence is not stopped, police violence is not stopped. As I say in the beginning, the forest evacuation happening before 12 years old, long time ago, but today I still feel it inside my dream, inside my feeling. Today, when I look at the face of my father and my mother, I see the effect of injustice and painful and unfairness in their faces. Today, it's good to say, sorry, my health of my two, my two parents are not good. The both of them, they have cancer. It's not because of the evacuation, but it's life. But you know, both of them, they have cancer, but they still speak about the houses. They still speaking about coming back to the house and have a good life in our houses. Today, when the decision of the evacuated, the another 4 family, like took from the court, it's opening for us another one. You know, since 2009, I'm not trying to say that I'm not visiting our neighbors. Why? Because like for me, it's very difficult like to remember the history of my house, to remember the evacuation. But like before 2 months, after 12 years, I'm passing by car near my house, never look to my house. Like I decide that like today, that this time is very good for you, like to broken this feeling and come back to your neighbor looking to your house. Really, it's very difficult. Like when I say it, like I want to visit the neighbors, it's very difficult. For people, they think when they ask us, Shrehan, you are the first family evacuated from Sheikh Jarrah, tell us about your feeling. They say it quickly, normally, like they didn't feel that it's very hard for us. After 12 years, I'm visiting our neighbors. It's opening a new wounded for me, but like for myself, I say, Shrehan, you are a psychologist. You support people like to speak about them feeling, to solidarity. You have to work on yourself. You have to support your neighbors. Everybody support you in Jerusalem when you evacuated. Today, it's your turn to support your neighbors. And actually, it's hard for me, but I do it. I visit my neighbors, I sitting with them again in the street. Really, in the beginning, it's hard. Like when I'm sitting under the tree, I remember the 6 months I'm living in the street. I remember everything. I can give you a details about 6 months, how I live, how we like go to take shower in the neighbor houses, how I'm sitting fasting in the street, eating in the street, studying in the street, seeing all my family living in the street, and then we leave our neighbors without anything changing. Yeah, there is many people supporting us, international Palestinian, but nobody bring me back to my house. Like before 2 months, my mom, she asked me, Sharihan, I want to support our neighbors. To tell you the truth, in the beginning, I told her, your health is not good. Maybe it's not. Sorry?
Go ahead. Go ahead, Sharihan. No, you're muted again.
Sorry.
Wow.
You know, my mom, she asked me like to go and support our neighbors. To tell truth, in the beginning, I told her, your health is not okay. I'm afraid about her feeling, to remember everything. I told her maybe it's good to support them by phone, not to visit them. But no, she'll say, I want to go to support them. And what happening that she tried to enter the neighborhood. They told her, the police stopped her. They told her, you are not live in this neighborhood. You are not allowed to go inside the neighborhood because they put a checkpoint near Sheikh Jarrah. Then she like start shouting, this is my house. I can give you a picture that this house for me. You can ask all the neighbors that this house for me. All Jerusalem knows that this house for me. But the police, they laughing, they told her, yeah, you have a house, but we steal it. The good thing that the police know that they are stealer. Like they told us, we steal the house as Ya'ub, the neighbor of Kurd families. I told him, if I don't took it, somebody else will took it. That they understand that they are not the owner of these houses. Then the thing make me surprised when they didn't allow my mom come. All our neighbors, the woman, they bring the chair and going for her, sitting with her nearing the checkpoint. They do it in Sheikh Jarrah, and start speaking. You know, in this time, I'm looking for them of how strong you are. Like you are never give up. You still support each other. The occupation not stop. You have a hope. And then I hear my mom. She say, you know, if there is a court happening, and they told that the people who's living in Sheikh Jarrah are the owner of this house, for sure the 3 families evacuated, they will come back to the houses. And really, I'm looking for her. I'm surprised. Never like didn't give any word. And then she told one of the neighbors, my health is not good. Like settlers, they didn't take care about my house. How I will clean my house, how I make it again my house, like to make it good, to like to have it as before. You know, really in this time, I don't have any word to support my mom. Come on, yeah, like you still have the hope after 12 years. You still thinking about cleaning your house or make it about like design it your house as before. Like how strong we are, really, like Palestinian women, Palestinian people really are strong. Like for us, we like know that it's like a reality that we are born under occupation. Like from the beginning of our life, we know that we born under occupation, but for us, we adapt, we coexist that like this is our life, this is our land. We're still like fighting to having our right. We will coping mechanism with all this thing in Jerusalem or in Palestine, and we will never give up, and we will never stop saying that this land is for us. Like I still have the key of my houses in 1948. I still have the key of my houses in Sheikh Jarrah. Today, I am a psychologist. In the beginning of my work, I start working with families of martyrs and prisoners. Today, I'm working with dropped out people from school, students from school, especially from Silwan and Jabal al-Mukabbar. Many of my students have like a decision to evacuate from them houses. Really, when they start speaking about the life and about the evacuated, I'm really the only one feeling about them because I pass this situation. When they say it's difficult for us to sleep, yeah, it's very difficult to sleep. When they say about nightmares, yeah, I believe them. When they say that our kids have bedwetting in the night and stress and anxiety, I'm believing them because I'm past all these steps, like during our evacuated, and until now, as I told you, I still have some of the trauma when I'm hearing the breaking of the glasses. But in the end, what I want to say that today I'm arrived that I'm a psychologist supporting these people, and I want all my neighbor like to be strong, like to never give up and say that Sheikh Jarrah are for Palestinian, not for settlers, not for Israel, it's for Palestinian, and we want to continue. Life is very good. We have hope always. Thank you.
Habibti, it's hard to speak after Sharihan. You feel lost for words, really. But I think that Sharihan, when you were sharing the video with your mom in Sheikh Jarrah with the neighbors on Facebook, and her story, I don't know whether her story was clear to the audience, but her mom's story was her main worry when she comes back to her home in Sheikh Jarrah, who would help her clean it up. This amazing power of thinking and believing and working and keeping in your viscerals the power to continue is what Sharihan is trying to tell us. Kutaiba, are you with us? Kutaiba? Kutaiba, أنت معانا? Okay, let me move to Ratiba. I don't know where Kutaiba is. Ratiba, would you like to talk about livability?
About what makes me strong? Maybe I didn't mention that I play the role of a mother in the age of 3 years old. When every couple months or something like that, the military forces come to our house and took my father to jail, arrested him, and kicked my mother to the West Bank, to Ramallah, and kept me and my little sister, she's 1 year younger than me, alone at a home, at a house that is completely destroyed because they put everything upside down, searching for something, I don't know what it is, and they left us in the middle of the night alone, me and my sister, till the other morning, when the parent of my mother is in its duty. It's from 6 to 6 in the morning till the 6 in the evening. So she can come back just at 6 o'clock in the morning. So maybe 4, 5, 6 hours of being alone at home. And after that, my other 2 sisters. So I was a mother of 3 younger children or sisters for me. This make me strong. The 2 visits to An-Naqab jail monthly, and in that visit, everyone in the bus told me that I am the flower of Palestine, and when I grow up, I will bloom to bring with me freedom and justice and all of these things. It raised up with me that I am the hero that will change the situation in Palestine. Maybe you can see me in every single action in Jerusalem, but all of these limitations in my life, in my childhood, 16 years of feeling afraid to be kicked out of this city, and always I'm looking for a permit to stay here. They raise up the love of this city inside me. I love every single stone in this city, not just the streets and the people and the stories. When I talk with people, I always tell their stories, their humanitarian issues, maybe little details in their life. I'm not talking about political issues or something like that. I just care about people who are like me. They suffer a lot from this limitation for no excuse, just because they are Palestinian. This is the strength that make me in every single action. I believe, and I raise to believe, that I will be the change. So I'm working for this change to define every single case in Jerusalem, in Sheikh Jarrah, in Silwan. I stand in front of the court. I stand on the checkpoints in Bab al-Amud, and everywhere in Jerusalem. Every case is my case because I live in this limitation of movement. I wish to go to Salah ad-Din Street. It's a merchant street in Jerusalem, to buy clothes in my childhood, and I can't. Whether all my friends in the classmate, they go there and make shopping. So this limitation in my life raised up this strength of me and this belief that I will be the change. And nowadays I'm a mother for 3 daughters, lovely daughters. They they want to be a part of this planet. They share in a lot of social forms by internet all over the world, and they feel that they must be a part of this global thing. And we have all of these limitations. And I promised them in their childhood that I will bring this freedom for them. I believe in myself, in my people, and all the people around me, that we will be the change by activism, to be active, to change the reality for better reality. Every single small, tiny change is a success of me and give me another start up and strength to continue for my people, for their cases and for their stories and for free living of them. Shireen is my case. Sharihan is my case, as well as Kutaiba, as Zakaria, as every single person in Jerusalem. They all live inside me, and I live for them. And this is the strength that make me continue to make this change. I'm now, maybe you can define me as a political activist, as a feminist activist, as a social activist. I don't care about all of these names. I believe that I am the change. I am the flower of Palestine that will bloom to bring with her the beauty, the freedom, and the humanitarian living for every single Jerusalemite here.
Thank you, Ratiba. I think that Ratiba is not just telling us. There is no time that I was in Bab al-Amud or in Sheikh Jarrah or and Ratiba is not there, whether with her hat and eyeglasses, whether she's reporting to somebody, whether she's fighting with the soldiers. So it's so true that Ratiba is always all over the place and her voice is very strong. And what's your strong message is love, and I think love is a practice of freedom. So at least our love to each other and your love to Jerusalem and to land. Dina, can you tell us how do you deal with survival, with sumud, with livability, with continuation?
Well, I must tell you that today this is one of the reasons. When I hear people like Ratiba, when I hear people like Sharihan, and I realize that's why we have to keep going, because there are other colleagues that are supporting us in the path, and their plight has been even harder and more challenging. But basically, because I believe this is where I'm from, like the poet says, and I'm in Huna, I'm from here. I still take people to my grandfather's house, and like Zach said, in Al Ba'a, I show them his initials are still on the house, believe it or not, with a broken glass window. I recall very proudly walking the streets with my father in Jerusalem. He has his landmarks. He was a civil engineer, so there's lots of buildings where I can recall, I can say, this is what my dad built. So I'm from here. This is my society. I enjoy, like Ratiba said, buying the kaik in Salah ad-Din Street on the corner, or going to the old city with all my childhood friends. This is what I recall. And I tell people, how can I live in the West or outside my country when people will not understand when I tell them يعطيك العافية or when I say na'iman? If people can understand these two words, maybe I'll find another location. For my friends in Ireland, it means God give you health. For people who are working, you can just walk the street and you see a laborer who you don't know, and you say يعطيك العافية, and there's a connection immediately, and people answer back. And this is the social connection that we appreciate. Or somebody having a haircut and you say na'iman. And unfortunately, what keeps me going is to find out that we still have some social fiber. What I fear the most is that what Israel is trying to do is also destroy that social fiber. And each other anymore. So yes, I'm from here, and this is my right. And I'm staying here, I hope. And all I say is, I just hope one day we will not regret what we have put our children through, because this is a choice we have made upon ourselves, and we leave them to make their choices in this world. And the world, unfortunately, is not a prettier place these days, because too many people are tolerating colonialism and supremacy and injustice. So we hope that the sound voices will continue to support justice and freedom for all. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Zach. Can I ask you if you would like to add something? Qutaiba, are you around? I think we lost Qutaiba. I'm trying to get in touch, but Zach, would you like to add?
Thank you. Thank you, Nadira. I mean, very powerful and emotional testimonies from my friends on the panel. Look, you know, our existence by itself in Jerusalem is an act of resistance. And, you know, for me, I have 3 beautiful daughters that I intend to raise in Jerusalem. All my friends who've given up on this city, on this place and immigrated, I speak to them regularly and I encourage them to come back. To, you know, I can't blame them for leaving, because, you know, you live once and you really want to make the most out of your life, and you want to live as normal a life as possible. And obviously in our city and in our context, and that in the context of occupation and oppression, you know, your mere existence is a threat to your oppressors. So you have to, you know, you have to struggle, you have to keep living, you have to enjoy every success in fighting this occupation as much as possible. And you have to keep raising your voice, telling your story, telling your narrative. Nadira, you spoke about, you know, my, you know, what I write on social media. You know, I have a lot of friends who like what I write because it reflects a true, I think, you know, experience of really dealing with this huge machine of oppression and abuse. And you know, we have to tell our story. We have to convey it to the world. And as I said at the end of my previous intervention, you know, we have to all be optimistic. We have to really feel proud at speaking up. I think we are making a difference. Our stories are reaching a lot of people's hearts. And the only issue I have is not with individuals like who are participating in this event, is how do you translate these stories into influence at the policy level? How do you change how governments devise policy when it comes to Palestine? And I think we have a long way to go because I think, you know, and allow me to end on a kind of a political note. In the US, obviously, we're not a priority in the current, at least in the current administration's thinking. The EU is too helpless and too preoccupied and too really soft with Israel to really make a change. And you know, the other countries of the world, you know, pay lip service to the Palestinian cause, but nothing more. And there's a major malfunction there in how politics is devised vis-a-vis Israel. And you know, these countries, without changing how they approach this conflict, without really naming and shaming the occupation and having frank discussions, and not only frank discussions, but imposing consequences on Israel for its continued policies, I think, you know, our impact on the individual level will continue to be strong, but it has to be married with something at the policy level. And that's where I invite everyone here to start thinking, how do we take that jump up and really start changing how countries view Palestine? And we have a lot of work, let's be honest, but I'm very optimistic and the signs are looking good.
Thank you, Zach. Thank you very much for pushing us toward thinking and thinking about ways to mobilize internationally and globally to open those spaces of hope. I want to open the space for questions from the audience. If there are any questions and comments or insights to our speakers. Unless, Kutaiba, are you back? No, Kutaiba is in Silvan and there is no something about the internet. So we have lost Sarah. It's lost, but any questions anybody would like to ask?
Yeah. I haven't got a question,
Yes.
but I'd like to say something, please. My name is Angela, and quite a few years ago now, Linda Ramsden brought me and a group of people to visit you in your house in Jerusalem. For some reason, that visit remains crystal clear in my mind. I can see your street, I can see your door, I can walk up your stairs, I can go in and I can see your lovely home where none of us seem to be squeezed in, and yet we were an awful lot of people. When you spoke to us, you told us how you'd been coming home with your shopping and you'd been thrust against a wall by an Israeli who wanted to search your bag and make out that you were probably carrying a bomb or something. And you were still a little bit sort of shaky about that, I think. And I dare say it's happened to you 100 times since. But I just wanted to say thank you, for that visit. Thank you for hosting us. And I have never forgotten, and I won't forget the testimonies of the people who have spoken to us this afternoon. I first visited Palestine, Israel in 1963, and it was something of an epiphany, because I'd thought when I came that Jews were making the desert blossom like the rose, and I had no concept of who the Palestinians were. And I came home, and in a way, I wasn't the same again. But it wasn't until 2011, when I visited again several times afterwards, that I really got a grip on what it means to be Palestinian. And, those visits have changed me, and I don't forget. And just to say to Zach, politicians don't lead, they follow. And it is the number of voices that keep raising the same thing. And certainly, recently, Palestine is much more on the map. When I first went in 2011, people were more or less saying where, why. That they don't say that now. So, you know, courage to you, and I hope we'll all have the courage to keep campaigning on your behalf. Thank you, Nadira.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela. Thank you. Actually, before we got into this, I was telling Gwen that some settlers were attacking our building, and I was on the phone with the police trying to explain to them that at least like try to make sure that they are not getting into the place. So it is never a dull moment. It's this assemblage that you have heard from Sharihan with eviction, from Ratiba with the body search, and it's not even body search, it's strip searching, because the way it's the touching of the body, but at the same time this power in Jerusalem to handle and to deal and to stand against the daily dismemberment never cease to amaze me. Any other reflections, questions that I'm not noticing hands? Yes, Gwen?
Thank you, Nadira. I want to thank all of you for those incredibly inspiring and moving presentations, and for your generosity in sharing your personal stories with us. I think that is a great act of giving. I just wanted to say something, and this is partly a reflection of Nadira's work in action, which is this insistent on small acts of living and small acts of resistance. And Sharihan's mother continuing to think about cleaning her house is one of them, and Ratiba's turning up at every demonstration is another, and Zach talking about, I will not leave, I want to bring my children up here. And those have to keep us in the frame of also doing small acts of living to influence our own politicians when we can, and all the acts that go into the really long, meticulous process of BDS, boycott, sanctions and divestment. They're slow, they don't happen fast, but you've inspired us to keep going from our side of the solidarity movement. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your presentations.
Thank you. Thank you, Gwen. Other comments? Okay. Okay. Sharihan, you wanted to say something? Yeah. Any other comments from the speakers? Okay, I want us to really, I want to see, and I want to conclude by thinking again how we see Palestine, how the voices that we've heard today really reveals how the native body and the community are really site of debilitations, from Sharihan's home and the creation of a new home in that street in Sheikh Jarrah, because this is where I have met Sharihan, in that street together with my girls. We used to go visit her, and we never believed how come a family is living in that street, trying to tell the Israelis and the settlers and the international community with all the help. To Qutayba's tent, I don't know whether Qutayba have mentioned, but Qutayba really, he keeps on saying, I was raised in a tent, because there's a tent in Silwan where they're trying to resist of course, I don't need to remind you of what does it mean. It's about the Palestinian uprooting. It's about refugee life, or Ratiba's invasion of her body and the borders of her mom, and the various checkpoints, and those demographic political ones that Dina was talking about, the kind of family reunification against this unending debilitation and dismemberment, and the geographic dismemberment that Zach was telling us. So I want you, when you think about occupied East Jerusalem and about the different assemblages that are working all the time, hand in hand in Jerusalem, to think about the voices that you have heard, and to think about how How can we work together exactly like that militarized assemblage to build counter assemblages? I see a question from Pamela. Yeah, go ahead, Pamela, if you would like to ask a question before we conclude. Yeah.
Yes, a little bit about the international situation. So the Palestinian supporters in Britain, some of us are in the Labour Party, and Jeremy Corbyn unleashed a wave of support for Palestine in the Labour Party. And for that, he had to be punished, and he is no longer allowed to sit as a Labour Party MP in Parliament. And the new Prime Minister, Labour Party leader, Keir Starmer, is purging everybody he can who supports Palestine and Palestinian rights under the cover of anti-Semitism. So there, and in America as well, it's I understand a similar situation, but there is progress being made. I think there's more and more support for the Palestinians internationally. And today there was a big demonstration which I was on in London with many different sections of the Palestinian community. So we are doing our best to support you here. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Pamela. Thank you really for all the amazing support we're getting, and we need to really keep on walking the walk. You know, we don't have the luxury of saying we're depressed, we can't do anything. Liz? Yeah, you're muted, dear.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I was on the demonstration as well today, and I was very inspired by how many Palestinian supporters were there and Palestinian people, because at one point some people got together and they began to do a wonderful dabka, and I thought that was very inspiring, and other people began to sing. So it was yes, it was a very strong representation of Palestinian power, I thought, today.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Okay, let me conclude, and as we come to the end of this gathering, that I'm hearing the various amazing voices and stories told in really markedly emotional register, one that might be described at some times as rage, as angry, as bitter and anxious. It's difficult not to come away with something of debilitating affective implications of living with the continued threat of exile at home. But as settler colonialism produces its values from that logic of debilitation, the indigenous struggle, as you've heard from Sharihan, from Ratiba, from Dina, from Zach, from Kutaiba, the indigenous struggle drove power from their refusal to accept state-sponsored elimination in their constant effort to avert attrition. So while the settler creates productive regime of debilitation, and as we heard from our speaker today, it's through the everyday communal act of self-affirmation of Ratiba standing on Damascus Gate and calling Hurriya la Palestine. So the fluctuation between that crippling effect and the agency and the agential capacity is a condition intrinsic to the voices shared in Palestine. So I want to end with Rafif Ziadi. Rafif Ziadi is a Palestinian poet, and Rafif explained, we teach life. And yes, we teach life, but there are so many body bags in the morgue. And we need to capture the debilitation and acknowledge that we get tired sometimes, but then those voices are really speaking live. So I want to thank you all. Sharihan, shukran kthir. Zach, shukran. Ratiba, shukran. Kutaiba b'jannan. Dina b'jannan. Thank you very much for sharing your voices. Keep on speaking, keep on raising your voice. We will keep on talking about our situation. And inshallah, we continue with our struggle in sharing, in solidarity, and in hearing each other. Thank you very much. Shukran.